month, as some of you know, and we're happy to have you here. And this is you to ask all the questions about to Adam. So enjoy. Adam Lavigne.
So where are we broadcasting this?
Facebook.
On Facebook?
Yes.
Okay. So we're Facebook Live then?
Yes.
Hello. We're at the Bonsai Supply. Jerome has gotten me this big old bogey. There's a train! Just as we start, we get the train. So am I coming in clear? Probably shouldn't have fertilized this. When did you get this?
I didn't fertilize it.
Oh, well he did then. That's bogeying all over that.
About 2 weeks ago.
Okay. I just washed my hands. So this is a Bougainvillea. It has small thorns on it. This might be one of the same ones that's like the Helen Johnson, but it's not a Helen Johnson. But the small thorns, it's not a glabra, just a regular one, because those thorns are like that. And these ones are just that. So he picked a good one.
Is that sarcastic or?
Yeah, if you want to take it that way. So everybody has to say hi to Facebook, and am I answering questions on Facebook too if people ask? Or?
Yes, if people start asking.
Do we have any viewers yet?
Yes, 6.
6. Wow.
6 already.
You need glasses?
Yeah.
How old are you?
Oh, Ed just joined.
Ed. Hey, Ed. So there might be some outrage that I'm doing this in the middle of winter. But it is a tropical tree, and we can do this to it at this time. Most of it is soil, pine bark. Yeah, we're in Fort Lauderdale. It's going to be 68 right now. So someone asked some questions, so we can make some answers and make it a little more interesting than me playing in the dirt. No? I'm going to start calling on you. Matt, you got a question?
Well, I have a couple of big boogies at home that I've been twiddling around with, and lately, just I think cold snap. I think they all dropped their leaves within the last week or two. I'm wondering if whether or not they're does the cold snap only, or if they're probably just preparing a flower.
A lot of times they will drop when they're getting ready to flower. This is a tree that is native to South America, and it flowers in the winter down there. Obviously not December, but their winter time, because of the light is not the duration of light is not as long, but also it's the dry season. So a lot of times they'll drop all their leaves because they got dry. And when it's cold in Florida, a lot of times it's really dry. You know, we still have fires and stuff. So the two of them, it's a lot like, you know, North America, South America, and we're right on that tropical line. So You can, they usually bloom December, January, February, depending on it. You can also get them to bloom if you defoliate. 6 weeks after defoliation, you usually get a bloom.
Okay, so it's after 6 weeks.
Yes. So if you are going to show it at like BSF show or something like that, that's when you do it. If we were to, there's not going to be any bogeys at the Epcot thing this year for some reason. It's weird, yeah. Nobody submitted any. But if we were going to do that, we'd defoliate it as soon as we heard that it's going to be in the show, and we take it out of the pot and scruff the outside of the soil, put it back in the pot, new soil, fertilize, and it will be blooming for the beginning of the show, March. So like we'd learn January, so that 6 weeks, January, February, March, that's how we get them to be blooming at that time.
Okay. So that was one of the main concerns with submittals. It's a tough schedule.
Yes. So I'm digging around at the bottom of this because I like to play with bottoms. I'm sorry. trying to find the nabari. So there's a little bit of a nabari here. This is a good soil. I know the bonsai people are looking at this. They're like, this is a good soil for growing bogeys that are in a big pot. It drains fast, it dries out enough, and it grows roots. You can see it's not lacking in roots. Nematodes like to attack these in Florida. The more organic you have in a soil, the less nematodes, because they like a sterile, dry mix. And or you can add organics to your soil if you do have nematodes. But how are you doing there, cameraman? No questions?
So Ed just said he's going to go wash some new kitchen cabinets.
So the biggest thing with this is as it was potted, it's pretty straight trunk like that. So it's kind of boring. But it did grow off at this angle, so if we just pot it like that, you give it a little bit of visual interest. The front of the tree is going to be here because we have that neat little dealie right there. So that again is visual interest. The main feature of this tree though is going to be the flowers, which I'm going to cut off just about all of them now. So the front's going to be like that. It's leaning towards you, so it gives you that sense of impending doom, like it's going to fall on top of you. And get a little movement too. So I think I need bigger tools. There you go. No. Got the big tools.
Adam, when rooting, if you wanted to root cuttings of these, how big of a cutting do you think you use? Like that?
I've done cuttings this big, like a trunk, like a person's leg. I just learned from a place. I think this is where this came from. They gave me the secret on how to root them that big and not get it, not have it rot. So imagine this is a big cutting. You take just a knife and you score down like that, 4 or 5 times around it, and put rooting powder on it, and it'll put roots all out like that. Yes, instead of just coming off the cut end. And they root huge ones, this nursery, which we're going to keep a secret. And let me look at the tree a little bit.
Do you want a bungee cord to kind of keep the tree down?
Sure. Look ahead. Everybody wants to see you work.
I don't think they do.
They don't ever see you work, so you know it's kind of like a. I'm gonna stand over here.
The table is rotten underneath. I just saw.
Ah.
It's not good. So much to your bungee cord.
So this is a pretty good tree, pretty good choice. I think probably Marie picked it out, not Jerome. Incidentally, these are going to be very similar size to the BSF convention workshop trees.
Are you teaching class at BSF? Are you doing a workshop?
I'm not doing it on these. I'm doing it on Portulacaria, and I'm doing a demo or two, I think. How long do I have to do this?
About an hour.
About an hour. So I'm going to work, answer questions as people ask them. Jorge, you said you had a question in the back? Anyone get a before picture? So the more I cut off, the less I have to wire. Is anyone learning anything? It's an excellent question. As I cut, first thing I'm cutting to make sure I don't have more than 3 coming off any one point. Sometimes you cut that one, sometimes you cut that one, sometimes you cut the middle one. But I'm also cutting for taper and for movement. So we go from thick to thin to thin to thin, and then we go from this movement here to that movement, and then I just cut off this straight one because we go up into that. I know how these grow, so I know how to cut it back to get the best growth. There's all kinds of buds here that are just waiting to pop. And by getting rid of all this superfluous stuff and getting rid of the flowers, we can get it to grow and really push ramification. Now there are going to be long bits of no taper, and those will be cut back eventually, but I'm going to put wire on them just to make it so that it looks like a good tree to whoever wins it. You don't have to cut it back to bare bones every time you do a styling on it. I might do it if I'm trying to develop a tree as a nursery guy, but you guys, I have 3,000 trees. You guys have 3 trees? You have 3 trees? 18 trees? So you want something to look at, right? You don't want to have a stick that's just a stick all the time. So you don't have to cut off every branch all at once, even though that's how a lot of people teach. This is something we look at. It's like you buy a painting to put on your wall, but it's only halfway done. And the artist comes in every once in a while and paints a little bit for you. Or do you buy a painting that looks like it's supposed to look like? It's one of my biggest peeves on social media like Facebook is you get these people that I call the perpetual intermediate. They know all the rules, they know what they're doing, but they pick on the newcomers. Oh, you need to be letting something grow out like this, and blah 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 blah. Let them enjoy the trees. It's not conducive to keeping people in the hobby if you're always telling them their trees are crap. If you agree with that or not. Now here's a secret. Sometimes bogies are very brittle. So we can't wire a branch where we might want it to go. But if we were to take it, and these are concave cutters, they're designed to cut flush to the trunk. But if we take it and we leave a nub, like this here, most of the time you will get a new bud that occurs right where the branch goes into the trunk. So if I cut this nub off here, it might grow like that. And that might be a better position than something that's growing up at this angle here. We talked a little bit earlier about the fertilizer. I like Bougain. Bougain is a good fertilizer. It's specifically developed for bougainvilleas. It's a funny story. It's developed by a company, BGI, Bougainvillea Growers Incorporated. And they developed their own fertilizer. And they started selling it, and they started selling so much fertilizer, they stopped growing bogies. So they sold off that part of the business, and now you buy the fertilizer from them. Yeah, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart sometimes. You can get it at Amazon. It's pretty easy. So you see where I left nubs, where I might want something else to grow. Here. we have a nub that I'm going to do just a little carving on. It's not really all that strong, so it might just explode in the face, but that would be spectacular for the video. So this here is your standard C3 die grinder. It's this nice orange color, so you can find it when you had a little bit too much to drink. We have ourselves the Ninja bit. I think it came from Dale Cotroy a long time ago. This is a mean bit, so you be careful with it. They work good on the long shaft. They don't like to go too fast, so I have a variable speed foot pedal, just like a gas pedal, so I can go real slow, or I can go real fast. How often you do it? Every 4 to 6 weeks. But we don't feed them, we fertilize them. The tree feeds itself. This is it's called photosynthesis, so it feeds itself using water and sunlight and carbon dioxide, and it creates sugar, which then gets turned into carbohydrate. The fertilizer is just like a vitamin. It helps that process along. They did a study, this was like 100 years ago, what builds a tree, what is a tree made out of? So they put a tree in a closed environment, and they measured exactly how much soil was there and how much water they put on it, and they finally figured out a tree is actually made out of air. It's made out of carbon dioxide. You know, it's carbon. That's where you get charcoal. Every 4 to 6 weeks. Terrence Atkins. Sounds like a country singer. Is anyone having flashbacks of a bad dentist experience? Okay, just a little bit, just enough to make it look like a broken bone sticking out of somebody's arm or something. How's that? These are safety glasses. They don't just make me look cool, they're safety glasses. Okay, look at all the wire I have now. How's that on the?
Hello.
So Terrence is also asking, when is the best time to root prune?
To do a serious root prune, you want to wait for the summertime. This was not a serious root prune what I did. Most of the roots are up here. It was mostly dirt. But you can refresh the soil and scruff up the bottom of it just about any time of the year.
Are you going to replace the soil with mixture?
No, I think it'd be better if we just put this into there, cut the pot down. I don't think we need to pot this up right now. A little bit, yeah. See, a lot of the hormones that drive plant growth are either made or stored in the roots. So sometimes if you're doing something on top, I mean, we cut off a whole bunch on top, might be a better idea to not touch the bottom. But there are times of the year where it's just growing so much you can do both at the same time, on tropical trees especially. It's for me.
You can add. I'll bring it up there to use it.
Yep.
Now you don't need this much. So Victor Garcia says, greetings from Mexico.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Would anyone like some water?
As far as the carving goes, what's the best way to protect it since these rot?
The best way to keep bogey deadwood from not rotting is to get the carving as thin as you can, and then you use some kind of a wood hardener on it that basically turns the wood into plastic. There's one that's made by Minwax. It's pretty nasty stuff. But there's one that you can. It's water-based. It's what they use at the National Arboretum. I've seen it at the Ace Hardwares. Comes in a plastic jug like glue. No, that's not the Minwax. I can't remember what the name of that is. Uh-oh. Do not ever, ever, ever cut your wire with scissors.
You mentioned before there was a website about wiring that had
Yeah, that's if you just look up, it's a free class, a free online class, put together by Colin Lewis. He's a very popular bonsai author. If you've ever seen some of the old books, like the Bonsai Survival Guide and stuff like that, that's who wrote them. He lives up in Maine, I believe. And he's a pretty cool guy. He's kind of cantankerous every once in a while, but that's fine. Colin, Colin. It's one of those like Etsy stores or something like that. Somebody, I forget who saw it. This is where everybody's quiet, waiting for the snap. Right? Come on, I know you're out there. Raise your hand if you're waiting for the snap. Randy?
So the wiring, is it a must?
Is it a must to wire?
Yeah.
It's not a must, but you get a more natural looking tree if you use wire. The wire, you can mimic gravity, the way the sunlight hits things. Right, this is pretty much a young bush, and we're trying to make it look like an old tree. Old trees have very distinctive growth patterns that a bush just never will grow. You know, something that's young grows straight, just straight up, and there's old trees are gnarly and twisted and bent. Kind of like as we get older, that's what happens to us. So, but yeah, the wiring. The idea of bonsai is to make a young thing look like an old thing. So the wiring, it's almost like a paintbrush. It's very. You can paint with your fingers, but it's a lot easier to paint with a paintbrush. So I think it is a must, but it's not necessarily a must. There's a school in China, a school of thought in China. It's called the Lingnan Method, and it's basically clip and grow. So you'll grow out and you cut it back, and it will grow and then cut and grow and cut, and you can get zigzag patterns. Probably one of the famous bogies on the internet is one that was grown that way. No, I don't think I have. How about you? It could be. Yeah, they grow so well just by touching the ground, and they throw roots out. A lot of things are like that. You know, they don't hardly ever grow grapes from seed. It's all from cutting. So yeah, it's an interesting question.
I have another question from Terrence Atkins. I would like to know what is affecting my orange colored flowers. Sometimes come out red on just one branch.
It's just reverting to the original stock. I saw that. I was at the bogey place the other day, and I saw the one of the reds coming out. The red is it's a hybrid. It's been worked and worked and worked. That's the only way they can do seeds, I would guess. They'd have to do it by seed. Or sports. Sometimes you can get something to do a different color by putting radiation on it, and it kind of messes around with it, or putting some kind of a toxin on it. There's a plant called the autumn crocus that they use to get hybrids out of all the time. And the orange tends to be weaker. Oranges and yellows tend to be weaker, so that might be why it's reverting.
Adam, as far as the climate and temperature, how do you know it's okay to do the kind of work you're doing with it now?
It takes a little bit of experience to really know that. You have to observe the tree being actively growing. You need to understand how many more weeks of winter you might have. Are you able to protect it or not? For this, it would be good if you kept the root zone at about 60 degrees or above, and it will grow. It'll continue to grow. And that's pretty easy. If you're going to get a cold snap, you just bring it inside the garage or the lanai or something like that. But yeah, it's really you need to observe it. You need to talk to your trees. You need to be the bonsai whisperer. It's a lot of experimentation and killing stuff that goes into it. I once took a piece of a bogey like this, just a chunk. The trunk was like that, and just cut off like that and like that. And I took it and cocked at an angle in a bucket of soil, and it rooted and grew up, and it looks like now trees growing off the side of a cliff. I have one that everybody thinks is going to die. It was a piece like this, a chunk like that, and it only threw down one root. All the rest of it is rotted away. On the top it has a dead wood like this, and then it comes down to that single root, so it's only this big down here. I'm not really sure if it's bonsai, but it's art. It looks like a brush painting. And when it has red flowers on it, and cut off all the green ones, and just looks pretty cool. How am I doing on time? Timekeeper. 10 minutes. Oh no.
How much do you need?
11? 12, okay. That's a good compromise. I'd like to bargain with you sometime.
There's a lot of people that believe that when you repot a bougainvillea from nursery soil into a bonsai pot, that you should bare root it completely. Do you believe in that, or?
I don't like bare rooting anything completely. What you want to do is just ensure that it's going to drain. So maybe the first time you repot something, put it in a deeper pot than it should go in, or the way I do it, I take all the soil. Say this is the root ball with the tree coming up like that. I take all the soil out, going right up to the bottom of that trunk. That's usually the place where it collects too much water, and it rots it from the inside out like that. And then when I put it in the pot, I mound the bonsai soil and put it over the top of that, and then put the roots hanging down over that mound. So in 2 repotting sessions, that's how you'll get rid of all the old soil. But this is not broken down. There's big pieces of pine chunk in here. So this will drain, just not as well in a bonsai pot. What's that? They grow roots so rapidly, you do it every year. If you don't, the roots get so much in there, it just stays too wet, and then you end up with yellow leaves. So if something is really declining, it usually needs to be repotted or put into a bigger pot for a year. So what are we doing with this tree when we're done? It's going to go in the back of my car? Yeah, it's going to go in the back of my car? I did that once. I bought a raffle ticket and won my tree. It was kind of embarrassing. Because I knew it wasn't going to live, so.
So I guess it was just you and the picture of the tree, huh? Yeah, we saw the raffle ticket at the end, the bar inside. $2 a piece.
I like how you give me the new wire and I cut it all up and.
When it comes to picking the correct diameter of wire for a certain brand, what do you go by?
Well, if we're using aluminum, you tend to want to go almost as thick as the branch. If you go copper, which I don't see why anyone would use copper on a bougainvillea, it's about 1/3 to 1/4, depending on what you're wiring. This you want to go bigger because it's very brittle and you want that extra protection of a thicker wire so it doesn't snap. Depends on when you do it. Like right now it might stay on until May or June. If I did it in May or June, it might only stay on until July. So the more it grows, the quicker you have to take the wire off.
trick where they say you don't water it for a day or two before you're gonna style and bougainvillea? Something mentioned something like that once, or is it? It doesn't really matter.
You can do something like that with bogies. A lot of trees, if you don't water them before you bend it, they're easier to bend. The principle is think about a piece of celery, nice fresh piece of celery, full of water, it snaps. But if you have old dried out celery, it bends. So basically it's the turgidity of the cell wall is what you're manipulating when you let it dry out. I love throwing that word in. Makes me sound smart, but then I'm getting away with a joke too, so. So yeah, it's easier to massage and bend the wood if it's not as turgid. I'm sorry. Poor Jerome, whose English is his fourth language, he doesn't get the joke.
Why don't you explain? Why don't you explain on Facebook Live?
That would exceed the 12 minutes.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Let's add on an extra 3 minutes for that.
See, I'm sometimes a poet. Is it for me this time or?
I can a lot of Frank Cole.
That's good in between music, though.
Do. Yeah, call back. Now you'll notice this little bit of sloppy wiring here. Usually you want to wire so that the wires right up against each other, kind of like that. This here I want to split the difference so that when I bend it, the wire braces it so it doesn't crack. Whenever you bend a branch, where it's going to crack is on the outside of that bend. If you have a piece of wire, it braces it and hopefully keeps it from cracking. Yeah. Let me get out some fancy tools here.
Yeah, about 5 minutes left, right?
5 minutes, huh?
Yeah. Hey, you made that one.
I did. Embarrass myself if it breaks on Facebook Live. It's Wizard of Oz there, huh?
One last question. With the thorns, do you find that do you snip off all of the thorns, or do you leave the thorns because that's where that comes?
No, you snip off the thorns. You don't go all the way to the to the cambium when you snip them off. It's just very painful when you go to grab it and to bend the wire. It just, especially the small thorn varieties. So I think that's it. We seen that okay in the. So you see, it's like it's a big tropical tree or deciduous tree. The canopy, if we look down the bottom here, it's full. It just needs to fill in right here, and this will look pretty good in a pot. Pot it in June or July or something like that. Let it grow out 4, 5, 6 leaves. Cut it back to 2. Grow it out. Cut it back. Fertilize it a whole bunch, and that's about it. No final questions or? Nope.